Hello and welcome to DigFin VOX, the voices of digital finance. I'm your host, James DiBiasio. Before we get into it, please like the channel, subscribe, leave a comment. These all bring traffic to the site. And we'd love to hear what you have to say about this interview, which is with Navin Suri, co-founder and CEO of Percipient, a Singapore-based artificial intelligence fintech whose mission is to help financial institutions do a better job of digital transformation. But my question really is, what is digital transformation? Where are we with this thing which has been going on for years now? And what does it mean, especially in the era post-COVID? What's happening with banking digital transformation?
Bank digital transformation, from my perspective, is going as slow as it has been in the past. I think banks have tried to digitalize things which were already digital, and they started to call them and add them to the count of digital.
What do you mean by what do you mean by trying to digitize things that are already digital? What does that mean?
So, without taking names, I do get the many banks who are saying 80% of our customer interface is now digital, and underlying that is IVR and ATM transactions and mobile transactions and mobile logins, and that was already there.
Mm-hmm.
That's not new. I mean, you've sort of given it a new name. It's like you talk about buying things which are more environmentally friendly. Many of these things already existed. So, to say that, look, I'm 10% environmentally friendly, it's not that you've become 40% environmentally friendly. You're still buying the same thing, but just calling it because now you can tabulate it under a new head.
Yeah. So what do you think when banks are talking about digital transformation? What do you think? There's the marketing side, and then there's the actual side where they need to compete. So what do you think is there? Do you see a difference in those two things?
Um, I think yes. I think there are differences there. On the marketing side, I mean, digital transformation as a set of words, as a set of two words, is what cloud was, I think, 3 years ago, and what big data was 5 years ago. So, you now have digital transformation, which is at that phase where I think this fad, if I may, will last maybe another couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, on the actual side, I think banks still struggle with being able to access all their own data.
Okay.
They sit on a variety of disparate legacy systems. They can't get rid of them. People are trying to bring in uh, new core banking systems for incremental functionalities that they're adding, because the legacy is so huge and it's so embedded and is so difficult to change that they have to find uh, either a whole new way of doing things or make some small incremental changes. And there was this McKinsey report, which I often talk about, that came out about a year and a half back, and I can send that to you, which said, for a mid-sized bank to do digital transformation, it's likely to take between 50 to $100 million and anywhere between 3 to 5 years. And that's long. And, by which time the whole world passes you by. So I think the world is due for a refresh in how digital transformation itself is approached. And I'm not trying to fit in what we do there, but I really think that it's been long since something fresh came to the market.
Yeah. I mean, I want to get to that and what Percipient is doing. But just to go back on this point with the banks themselves or other big financial institutions, um, they've been pulling together data lakes. They're moving much more to the cloud. There's plenty of vendors out there trying to help aggregate data or allow banks to use it more nimbly. How far along are they? I mean, I hear about this all the time from banks and their vendors. In your opinion, based on your experience talking to banks, is it sort of we got our warehouse problem solved and now we can move on to something else, or people like to say things and maybe it's not exactly 100% what's going on.
Yeah, so I think a data warehouse problems got solved,
Okay.
but a lake house problem has gotten invented. Let's put it that way. So data warehouses gave way to data lakes, and now I think we have lake houses, which is more complex than just having either one of them.
So what's a lake house?
So it's a combination of you're sitting with the data warehouse and you're sitting with your data lake. And so when Hadoop came along, several years ago, and people migrated to these data lakes, they figured now, which is once they wanted to scale it up, it sort of was not allowing them to scale at the way they expected it to. It got some costs out, but it did not allow for the scalability of the integration of all the data that banks wanted to put in there. So that's been a big problem. And from a growth perspective, I think cloud per se is the way to go. I mean, and everyone talks about it, and rightly so. I think it's absolutely spot on. So, whether this is private or hybrid or just public clouds, banks have moved towards adopting cloud for bringing down their costs and bringing some. But migration is a big challenge. So we're talking to a major core bank provider in the U.S., for example, who've built a new digital core banking platform, and they have several hundred installations of their legacy core banking in banks in the US, and they don't have a bridge between the two. So they want to take their new modern banking system, new age modern core digital to their existing customers, and they are saying, how do I bridge between the two? My data is so disparately distributed. So I think that problem is still there.
You said to me once that you're trying to change the way banks change. Yeah. So just tell me a little bit about why you founded Percipient AI and how you do that.
Yeah. So we're a bunch of bankers, Jamie, and we've experienced the problem of launching digital products, launching digital customer experiences, digital partnerships firsthand in our lives back when we were all in Citi. And, I'm talking 5 years ago. And we launched our first product, which enabled banks to just basically integrate all their data, whether it's structured, unstructured, etc. But over the last 2 years, we've picked up on the need to reinvent how digital transformation is done at financial institutions. And the way we've attempted to solve it is using our real domain expertise, having done digital transformation back in Citi about 150 times in 40 countries across all products, cards, loans, data warehouses, open banking, mobile, credit cards, and all of that. And what we've found is a new way where we can actually decouple the legacy systems that a bank typically owns. And those legacy systems are holding the bank back from going digital at the front end with the customer. And inventing a middleware, which is something we call a digital twin. Right. So you have legacy systems, and we'll help you create a digital twin, which is effectively capable of working like a core bank platform without actually being heavy as a core bank, and can then allow you at the front to do anything that you want. So the way we do this is we've taken the digital twin technology, which Jamie has existed. Sorry, you're going to say something?
No, please go ahead. I remember you once given me an analogy to Tesla about this, which I thought was sort of an interesting way to understand.
Yes, that's correct. So what we've done is, so you've got a bunch of core banking systems. Typically, banks have between 3 to 5 different product processors. One calls customer as CUSTOMER, the other calls as CM, the other third calls as CUST, let's say. Now, the way the twin makes that simpler is we do a one-time mapping of the way your data is existing in different product processors into a common data model. This is not a data warehouse. This is just a common data model. It's just the structure of the data that exists in your individual systems, which is normalized to one language, to one common structure. And this then becomes the base, based on which you can actually launch any AI machine learning based analytical outcomes. You can fire up reports and dashboards. You can fire up mobile applications. On the top of this, we have now pre-built a library of about 80 APIs, and we're heading towards 300, which will allow banks, especially in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 segments, who struggle with the talent, who struggle with the money, who struggle with the time to go digital, to actually pick these APIs and be able to construct customer products which are digital, customer experiences which are digital rapidly.
Right.
So you can go digital without modernizing your legacy systems. And that's what we've enabled. This costs 1/15th, 1/20th of what it would cost otherwise. And the time it takes is between 8 to 12 weeks to be fully digital and up and running.
What do you think that artificial intelligence, broadly speaking, is going to be able to do for financial services? Where do you see the industry being able to move with these new tools and capabilities?
Yeah. So I personally quite like a word that I heard somewhere where that it's not artificial intelligence, it's augmented intelligence.
Mhm.
Which is that there's something that you know already, and this method of analyzing data in a very scaled way, in a very real-time way, which is fed into an algorithm, is really helping you augment your decision. So I think there will be more personalization for customers. And I'm talking on the retail side, on the consumer side, clearly. A lot more personalization. I'm surprised that I bank with three major banks in the world, so to say, both on the corporate side and on the retail side, and I still don't even get a text message which says, "Hey, you are near a Starbucks, and can we give you a 20% off if you walk in because you're our customer?" Even that level of intelligence has not yet been used by the biggest banks. So I think the headroom for AI starts from the basics. These are things that we hear in conferences that we're now being able to tell you when is it that where you are, and based on the context of that, we can actually give you recommendations of what you should be doing. But the practice of that is not there at all. So
And why do you think that's the case? This technology isn't new. So
yeah, the
what's the issue?
technology is not new. I think there are primarily three reasons, if I may. One, I think, is that the knowledge to do these sort of things does not really exist inside financial institutions. When I say knowledge, the ability to develop these models, the ability to test these models, it doesn't really exist inside organizations. It typically exists outside, which is the fintechs and the AI companies. And the ability for these companies which are outside to have built algorithms which can really scale uh, is not there by themselves until they get some first 2, 3, 4 banks who are willing to test them and give them an opportunity. So I think it breaks down there, where in-house the talent is not sufficient. It's available outside, but it's not scaled. So you typically find that fintechs or AI companies struggle and to be able to go into banks. So and the bars that banks have, that you must have 10 paying customers and you must have 20 installations, are so high that they fall apart. So I think that
Yeah.
is a very big reason.
Do you see that changing? Because when I speak these more recently with people at large financial institutions, banks, insurers, what have you, they seem to say that that the process is getting easier. They're trying to be faster and a little more flexible working with fintech partners. Do you think that's true in reality?
Um, I'm going to be provocative here and say, for the most part, no.
Mm.
For a small part, yes. And I personally think that the innovation teams and digital teams were a good first step that was taken, but that system, that vertical sort of that was created, which was sort of a microcosm of the big body, the dinghy behind the big ship, which could really do what it wanted to, I think has sort of outlived its relevance. And that change that this system was going to provide in the speed at which financial institutions adopt new solutions has not fully been achieved. At the same time, at the CEO level, there is a little bit of belief that, look, I need to change. So very often, I believe that the problem actually is at the top.
Mm.
It's less so at the middle, even less so at the bottom. And I think there is a need for and banks where the top has taken control to say, look, we want to change. And a classic example, all of us, at least in Singapore, are very proud of, for example, is DBS. And they won all the. They started this as a very cultural thing, and Root brought it down, and we've heard them talk about we're a 20,000 man startup. So I think the problem is at the top. The problem is also at the procurement side with banks where their requirements are very high, the barriers are very high. Their interest is there, the intention is there, but the execution suffers.
Okay. Do you see that that will change as banks have to deal with, say, virtual banks or neobanks that are coming online in Asia and worldwide, or from, protect even say the crypto space where we're seeing, the potential for different types of financial institutions or arrangements? Will these spur faster change at banks, or will they just say, well, we've got a lot of customers, we've got a lot of data, we're regulated, and they'll just sort of, there'll be the big brontosauruses that are just kind of, lumbering through the jungle.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent point there. So I think there are four things happening for banks. One, of course, is COVID's pull digital forward by anywhere between 2 to 3 years, if not more, for banks. And everyone, first half of last year was caught off guard. Second is clearly fintechs are eating away, thawing away at the low-hanging fruit, the robo-advisors, the payments, the insurance. The third is you've got these big tech coming in. So Google's launched Googleplex, and I think it's a Trojan that the banks are letting in, which they will have to unwind out of maybe 5, 8, 10 years from now. And the last thing is that you've got all of these neobanks that are coming in. So, and if you see this sort of dark clouds approaching from all four sides for existing banks incumbents, it's quite a challenge. So I absolutely see that turning digital really quickly overall else. It is a board level KPI now for the board itself, and of course for the CEO to do more and more things which are digital. Speed will be still an issue.
Right.
I think they will lag.
But we did see banks last year with COVID in March and April make some pretty fundamental transformations. I mean, it wasn't a choice at that stage, right? COVID was the chief digital officer that nobody wanted, but maybe everybody needed. Trading floors distributed across, homes, customer engagement, team working, everything has changed, and I'm sure a lot of that will remain permanent. So, did that to you prove that banks do have the capacity to make, pretty bold changes, and that and this will now continue? They've got the wind behind their backs. They've proven they can do it, or was it a one-off? It was an emergency. They did absolutely what they had to do to keep the markets going and business going, but as we return to business as usual, it'll also be a sort of a transformational business as usual pace as well.
I think it's a structural fundamental reset.
Okay.
What COVID has done, it's a structural fundamental reset, but the banks that will be fast to the draw, the fastest finger first, which means that it's not about fixing that my employees can work from home and, I've got all my systems set up for that, but it's that there is a reset happening. How quickly can I make these changes is going to decide the winners and losers, and the results will be visible, I think, in the next 2 to 3 years itself. So, but banks, you're absolutely right. COVID was the chief digital officer that everyone wanted, and I love that statement because it is absolutely what it. And in fact, it's for most industries, not just for banking. So yeah, agree with that.
Last thing I want to ask you about, Navin, is in Singapore, you are I guess, a provider on the API Exchange marketplace. Is that working? So this was set up in sponsorship by the MAS and the ASEAN Bankers Association and the IFC from the World Bank Group, and developed this platform basically to have fintechs, global fintechs that could market their services to banks or financial institutions in emerging markets where they don't have the scale, they don't have the ability to pay big tickets to vendors and so on. Is that program catching pace? Are we seeing results coming out of that?
Yeah, thanks for asking on Apex. It absolutely is, Jamie. And I think as a team that's working on that platform, we're quite amazed. And let me share some numbers here with you so that it puts some context. So the platform now has, and in 2018 at the Fintech Festival when this was launched, it was just 2 years, literally, or 2.5 years ago. It was an experiment which was funded to see whether we can simplify how fintechs and financial institutions collaborate with each other. It took a year for the platform to be actually developed. It was really launched at the next Fintech Festival, which is in 2019. And it's been really in production for about a year plus 3 or 4 months. There are about 400 fintechs on the platform. A little over 60 financial institutions. These fintechs are providing solutions in over 50 categories, and they collectively come from a little over 30 countries. So the numbers are very compelling. COVID made Apex very relevant because both sides didn't know how do we get in touch with each other because you couldn't meet each other physically again. So I think that came in as tailwinds which were not expected. Apex launched a virtual hackathon platform, literally built in 60 days in May of last year. In February, we sat down, we said, look, this is breaking down. Nobody will be able to meet. What do we do? We said, let's launch a hackathon platform, build it from scratch virtually. Now, we've done, I think, about 13 hackathons on the platform in the last 5 or 6 months from the biggest names. So, you've got the Bank of International Settlements, you've got NPCI from India, you've got Time Bank, who's done stuff, you've got UN multilateral agencies, and each of them have posted 2 or 3 problem statements for which they're looking for solutions, and they've been inundated via the Apex platform with anywhere between 100 to 400 solution providers saying, I can solve it for you. And all of it via the Apex platform. Okay. So I think it's been an incredible platform. The timing of it originally wasn't meant to be as good as it turned out to be, given what COVID forced the world into.
Yeah, okay, great. Well, Navin, thanks for your time. And good luck with helping finance institutions find their digital mojo.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Thank you for having me on your platform, and good luck.